Yeah, so enlightenment is not a non-dualistic concept because enlightenment is not a concept. But provisionally, that's how we think about it, right? So there's the theory behind it, the ideas and the concepts, and there's the actual direct experience of reality. Now, the actual direct experience of reality is the thing. That's the ultimate reality. That's how things are. But where we go wrong is that we mix up the way we conceptualize reality with the actual visual experience of reality itself. We mix these two things up. And this is actually what is called duality. This is how we fall into duality. Now, we need this, right? We need conventional language. We need to relate to things and conceptualize things in order to survive in the world, to make our lives more easy. If you sort of lost this ability, you would kind of be sort of like somebody who's brain dead, right? You would just have no way of interacting with reality if you had no concepts. There's this state of sometimes with very young children, it's called narcissism, and then they think that everything is them. Everything they experience is just part of them. They have no distinction between the outer world and themselves. And it's a very short-lived period. But it's a bit like that. If we were kind of like that, we would be like this sort of totally helpless little baby who's not able to do anything. So we have these concepts about the world. I had a thought. Today was a good day. These sort of things. We need that because we'll talk to our friends and say, how was that talk with Lama Choga? And one will say, oh, yeah, it was really good. And then she'll go to somebody else, right? And go to talk to Lisa and say, how was it? Oh, it was terrible. He was talking a load of rubbish, right? So we have the exact same event that two people experience and they have a totally different take on it. You know that yourself, right? In politics, it's like that. I mean, recently you've had sort of elections, and if somebody's sort of a far right-wing supporter, they think, oh, we did really good, that was wonderful. And somebody else will be totally depressed. They'll be like, oh no, things are going so wrong. So we have this one kind of experience. It isn't different, but we have a different way of looking at it. This is where we get lost in duality. Now, what is enlightenment? Enlightenment is getting back in touch with your authentic nature, the way things truly are. But in order to do that, then one has to drop all of our conceptual imputations. We have to lose all of our conceptual fallacies. These conceptual fallacies are like this massive database, right? It's like this data server we've built up all our lives, and we store things there. We learn things as we grow, how to relate to the world. And we build up this kind of, like I say, it's like a big bookshelf. And then when we relate to reality, what we do is we refer to previous experience. And we conceptualize that. So enlightenment is basically getting rid of all that and resting in what is called unborn or true nature. And in that unborn and true nature, there is no dualistic thinking. There is the mere kind of naked, raw, visceral experience of reality. And itself is taught to be bliss and emptiness in union. So really, you hear these terms, appearance emptiness, clarity emptiness, bliss emptiness. But what that is talking about is this middle way between the extremes of appearance or existence and non-existence. And it's abiding in this that is enlightenment. Now, you wanted me to specify a little bit more. Then we have what is called liberation, and then we have final enlightenment, and they're not the same. And liberation is when one goes beyond suffering. And what does that mean? That means to go beyond the mundane world. So what does it mean to go beyond the mundane world? Is it like going to some heavenly realm? No. It's the point at which self-identification disappears. And it's not a concept, right? I can say to you, there is no self. You can say, oh, I understand that. That doesn't do anything for us, right? We don't get liberated just by understanding a concept. What has to happen is that we have to realize that. So there are 3 stages. There's understanding, experience, and realization. Understanding is just being very clear about what's being said with no doubt, and also this ability will arise to be able to explain that. What is no self? How come there's no identity? For example, you say, well, what are you talking about? I was born at such and such a time. I remember when I was a child. This is me. This is my name. This is my mother. This is my father. I have this identity. And then I will say to you, oh, really? Okay. So where is you? Where is this self? And people will go like this or something. And then you say, well, if you're here, then does that mean you're not here? Or for example, what is the hand? Is the hand the thumb? The index finger. We break these down into parts. What we find is that we're imputing or labeling the notion of a self upon an agglomeration of different things, right? forms the body, feelings, perceptions, right? Formations, consciousness, these sorts of things we label as self. But we can't take any one of those things independently. So this is the process by which we gain understanding. Once you have correct understanding, that will be unshakable. You develop a kind of certainty. And then through your own contemplation or making that personal, and usually that's in the form of meditation or practice, what happens is that real experiences of that truth arise to your mind. Like, for example, the truth of emptiness. Real experiences, not an understanding. You will have a real visceral experience of the empty nature of reality will arise for an instant in the mind. That's called experience. When those experiences build up until it's consistent and unchanging, that's called realization. And so once you have this kind of realization of no self, you are liberated. That means you no longer suffer. But you still haven't achieved final awakening, which is a state beyond all identification and duality. And so that first level of liberation is when we lose our, what they're called is emotional obscurations. So it's where we have this coarse conceptual identification with reality. But we still have to remove our cognitive obscurations in order to become a Buddha. And those cognitive obscurations are extremely subtle. They go from very, very coarse to extremely subtle. And so when I presented the different types of non-duality, the Advaita Vedanta, the self-empty and the other empty, etc., the way of thinking about how everything we experience is just an arising or an emergent property of the mind or brain, those sort of different levels, they all have to be removed until you have a kind of stable realization of the truth of reality without any subtle identification. And that's Buddhahood. And it's incredibly difficult. It can take a very long time. Hope that helps.